It's been quite the adventure, hasn't it, for Northampton Town under Jon Brady, because in nearly kept them up in 2021 after taking charge from Keith Curl with a significant improvement that season. The following campaign, they managed to get to the playoffs. Unfortunately, they lost in the semi-finals, but they'd come very, very close to automatic promotion, losing on the final day, missing out on the final day at Barrow. And then the following season, they did manage to get over the line despite a spate of injuries. But last season, another impressive campaign because they were mid-table. They were sort of in the middle of the bottom half for up until around November. Then they put together an incredible run of form that really put them into the top half before they just dropped into the bottom half. But a really progressive campaign for the Cobblers, who were, by many people's estimations, one of the likely relegation candidates. So Jon Brady's done some wonderful work, but it's not going to get any easier for Jon Brady nor Northampton Town, because League One's going to get stronger. They've just lost Sam Sherring. They've just lost Marc, Leonard. Kieron Bowie was only on loan as well. So a big bit of some key players to replace. They've got a decent core of players there in terms of players under contract, but a lot of work to be done, especially in those key areas. So are the Cobblers ready to defy my expectations and others once again? Well, that's what we're going to be talking about on this Summer Deep Dive. Yes, welcome along to the latest EFL Debate Summer Deep Dive. One of 72 we're doing club by club across the EFL between mid-June and mid-July. Already the full set for League 2 uploaded to YouTube and to Spotify. A few for League 1 as well, so go check those out and subscribe once you're done with this episode. For now, I'm delighted to be joined by Charles Commins from the It's All Cobblers To Me podcast. Charles, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate your time this afternoon. How do Northampton Town navigate the monstrous challenge ahead that is League One this season?
It's going to be hard. Hi, Gab. Thanks for having me. There's no doubt, I don't think, within our support that we know where we're kind of at and maybe where we're aiming for. The glimmer of hope that we've got, of course, is what happened last year was unexpected by many pundits, including yourself. And we're going to try and obviously replicate that again. We know that we don't have the biggest budgets. We know that we don't have even the biggest of the smaller budgets either. And so that represents a challenge. But what we do have is a management team and structure that has overachieved, not just last season, but probably the last 2 seasons before that as well. When you look at, where we were in terms of that budget table for each division that we've been in. So if we can replicate that, if we can go and do that again, if we can get players in and we can make them play above the level that maybe that they've achieved before or that they're expected to be able to perform at, then I think we're in for another decent season.
Let's hope that's the case. How do you feel Jon Brady has been able to achieve what he has over the last 4 years? Because there's been some incredible work going on, hasn't there?
Yeah, there has. I think it all comes down to the fact that he is just an incredible coach. I know he is the manager. That is his job title. But I think really the thing that he loves doing is coaching. He never intended on taking a management position, I don't think, necessarily anywhere after he'd been at Brackley. He went into, he opened up his own youth academy and then did the under-18s at Northampton Town, I think on a part-time basis originally, before he then was asked would he step up and actually do that full-time. And then the events of, Keith Curl in our last campaign in League One, not going so well, let's put it that way. He was then the only person really left at the club, I guess, that was asked to just step up on an interim basis. And he took us from playing hoofball, just clear our lines football constantly, with very little attacking, endeavour, I would guess, to at least showing sparks of, look, you can play football. These players can play football. Those last, you know, whatever, however many amount of games it was that we had in League One that season, we actually didn't end up that far off staying up points wise. And there were games that really stood out in terms of, I know we lost to MK Dons, but that was through naivety towards the very end of the game. Should have really held out for the 3 points, if not the draw. And we just didn't. We just kept attacking, and that left us open. And MK exploited it that day. But he showed immediately that he can get the best out of the players that he's got at his disposal, and that all comes from his ability on the training field, I think.
Yeah, certainly does. How are you feeling about where Northampton Town are at structurally, Charles?
Structurally, in terms of the club as a whole and the ownership structure, is that what you mean?
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I don't really know how to feel about it. I am very much kind of a steady wave, just going along. There's nothing big or over the top about it. We've got the same owners in David Bauer and then Chairman Kelvin Thomas, as we've had for the last, what is it now? 7-8 years, something like that. Yeah. And we have, though, brought in like Nigel Lacane, who is a businessman from Jersey, who has put some, you know, equity, I guess, into the club, and that is potentially going to bump us up a little bit. I know that our budget has been increased already this summer, and I don't know this for fact, but I imagine that that money has come from that new investment as opposed to the additional, the original owners of the club. We've also had Jim Rosenthal appointed to the board. Now, again, I don't know whether any money comes with that. I think that's maybe more of a statesman type figure. Obviously, incredibly well known in the world of football, and will just be able to sort of help maybe put us on the map a little bit. Not necessarily with fans. I want to make that clear. I think it's more, you know, a statesmanship thing within the world of football, on maybe the, you know, the club to club sort of conversations that happen. So I mean, getting new investment in, getting, you know, new people on the board and new people involved, I think is a good thing, especially when I mean, look, I don't know anything really about Nigel Lacane, but Jim Rosenthal, we all know he's a very passionate football fan, and yes, I don't think he is a Northampton Town fan. In fact, I know he's not a Northampton Town fan. Yeah, exactly. But that's where he knows Kelvin Thomas from, and they're great friends. And I have seen Jim Rosenthal at loads of Cobblers games over the years. So it's not like he's coming in having never witnessed a game or anything like that. He's quite regularly seen in the stands, usually sat next to Kelvin. And the way that Sixfields is that space where the board and everybody associated staff-wise with the club is just inside the main stand. Where you know the TV gantry is that you would see when you're watching the highlights. So people know he's there. There's no hiding of any of our, you know, staff or directors or anything like that when they're watching the game. So everybody's aware of who's there, scouts included. So I'm quite happy with that. I mean, I suppose the big news up until this week was the fact that work on the East Stand to complete that has actually begun after 10 years or whatever it's been since it got stopped. That's I've not seen it myself, but that's looking positive that it's getting done. I think the aim is for it to be completely finished by Q1 of 2025, so just after Christmas. Hopefully it will be completed. That will give us a little bit of extra revenue, because there will be boxes for, you know, sponsors and you know, commercial people to go and buy and hire out during the week as well, something that we've never had before. So that will generate a little bit. I'm not, you know, it's not going to be excessive. It's not going to be a game changer for us, sorry. But it's more than we've had before. So again, positive, small steps, let's call it, in that way. So yeah, positive. But as I said before, I'm just calm about it. I'm not, you know, one way or the other, ripping up trees because I want the ownership
What,
out.
what,
But I'm
what
also
would
not.
they need to, okay, so you're calm about it. What would they make you, what would they need to do to make you feel super positive as a Northampton fan that yes, we're in a great place structurally?
I mean, it's difficult to give you an answer to that because I'm a realist, and I'm not somebody that just expects people to just throw their money at something. I know that
Okay,
other football fans do that. I'm
sure.
not like that.
Okay,
I run my own business, so I kind of understand it, and I
yeah.
get how that works. And
Hmm.
while the connection that I have with my business is going to be different to the connection that the owners of our football club have to the football club themselves, I'm obviously a huge fan of my business, so to speak. So I'm going to do as much as I can to make it the best that it can be. I'm not saying that they don't do that, but they're not fans. They weren't fans of the Cobblers when they bought the club. So there is
Hmm.
going to be a difference there.
Have
I
they
mean,
bought
look,
into the club on an emotional level, do you think?
absolutely,
Yeah.
definitely.
Okay.
There's no doubt. I can only really speak about Kelvin Thomas here. I've never met
Okay.
David Bauer. I don't think he's
Right.
actually been to that many games. He's basically the money behind, well, he is the owner, but he's the money provider essentially. But Kelvin Thomas definitely has. I cannot.
Okay.
No, I don't
Right.
think anybody can deny that.
Okay, brilliant. From I'm going to have a look at the squad now. I want, in terms of the goalkeeping department, you brought in Nick Zarnev, who was at Wimbledon previously. A few question marks for me about him at this level. Lee Burge has had I think, an up and down time with Coventry City. Um, how are you feeling about the goalkeeping department?
I'm happy that we've got competition in for Lee Burge.
Okay.
I would have, in an ideal world, I'd have loved to have gone in and got a number one keeper, better than what we've already got, and therefore Burge become the backup or fighting to get that number one jersey. This ideal world doesn't exist anywhere apart from my head, unfortunately. So the fact that we've gone out, we've got a goalkeeper in on a permanent contract as opposed to a loan like
Mhm.
we had last year. That means that we've not lost a loan that we might need elsewhere in the middle of the pitch. So that's a positive. I think that the issue with Lee Burge has just been injuries that he's had last year. Every time he came back from those injuries, it would take him a little while to be able to get going again, to be kind of what we expected of him. There are question marks over goals that we've conceded on his near post, and I'm hoping that that is something. And I know for a fact that James Algar, the goalkeeping coach, that will be something that he's constantly working on with Lee to help improve, because that's what all the coaches do at the club, is look to improve the players. So if that can improve, I am more than comfortable with Lee Burge being number one. I don't really know anything about Nick Zanev at all. I know that he saved Sam Hoskins' penalty a couple of years ago when we were
In 2021.
at the. I can't even remember which stadium it would have been. I don't think it was Plough Lane at that point.
No,
I
it might
think
have
it
been
might
at
have been
Loftus Road, possibly.
possibly. So I remember that, but not much else. And I know he was really back up last season for AFC Wimbledon as well.
Mm.
So maybe I wouldn't have necessarily noticed him on the highlights because he won't have played that often. But the fact
Mm.
that he is big, 6'5", I think he is. I know I've seen what the AFC Wimbledon fans have said. We asked on our podcast Twitter account, AFC Wimbledon, tell us what you think, and we had a lot of things about his distribution not being well, and as long as we're not looking to play out from the back with him, then it should be okay. His shot stopping is really good. I think that's kind of like, you need that as a keeper anyway, don't you? That's a basic thing. You need to have good shot stopping. I would hope that he will provide some competition to Lee Burge and push him, because I think he needs that. I think he needs somebody to be actually on his coattails, looking to try and take that number one jersey off of him. And with the way that Burge has been getting injuries over the past year, 2 years, it would be good to have somebody that has got experience, because last season, especially when we had Max Thompson coming in from Newcastle, Louis Molden coming in from wherever it was he came in from, they were young. They were young, inexperienced keepers who did great jobs for us. But it's just nice to have experience there, that you're not worrying as a fan, oh, I don't know anything about this young lad, and has he got the temperament? Is he up to the level, kind of thing? As we all do
but
that.
then, Charles, can I devil's advocate that? I would also say that with a young goalkeeper, they've probably got a higher ceiling. So if you got this lad on loan from the Premier League Academy, they could be amazing. I think we've seen some amazing goalkeepers come through in the lower leagues. Arthur Okonkwo, James Beadle, Carl Rushworth. I think because championship clubs don't want to sort of gamble on young goalkeepers. So actually in the lower leagues, you're able to get some really good value in terms of goalkeepers over the last couple of years. So for me, I think maybe the loan option might have been the better option if you're looking at quality goalkeepers. And I'm not sure that Nick Zarnev is... We'll see. Hopefully, I mean, he's a good shot stopper, clearly, so that's a good point. But then it is going to affect, if he does come in, it's going to affect the way that you want to play. And I do have some reservations about Lee Burge after last season.
Which is fair, I think. And I think we all kind of have reservations over it. I haven't seen Zanev play at all, as I said. Sure. I can't really comment on him. And I will also say this, is that I am very loath to go out there and be completely negative or even pick up on things that I'm not 100% sure of when I've not seen them play for us in my own eyes. It's a really difficult time of year, Gab, and, you will know this. You get to go and, watch many different clubs. You choose to go to a different game each week rather than going and spending all your time watching the Blues, which I know that you would love to do. And this season, I'm sure you're going to love it if you can get there to St Andrews, because they're probably going to walk it. But you get to see a lot more than, us, the people you invite on to talk about the individual clubs. So it's a difficult thing, I think.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, that's a tough one. So right backs then. I think that looks like a pretty strong position for you, Charles, because I'm a big fan of Aaron McGowan. He seems to be very consistent. I like Jackie and Odemayo as well. And you've got Harvey Lintop there, who you poached last year from Gillingham. So you look pretty well stacked there, don't you?
Yeah, there were rumours that Aaron McGowan was off, and I think the rumour was he was going to go to Carlisle. That's not come about. It was just a rumour as far as I know. I'm really pleased. There were also actually reservations about McGowan at the beginning of last season, whether he was able to make the step up to League One. He had his injury problems last year. I mean, we're probably going to say he's had his injury problems last year about every single player we talk about. So I'll caveat the whole thing with
and
that.
The year before.
And the year before, and probably the year before that as well. But he came back into the team, I want to say sort of after Christmas, and was fantastic. Proved everybody wrong in terms of who thought that he wasn't good enough to play in League One to a decent standard. The guy that, trust me, I've met him several times. The lad is a brilliant guy. He's one of those people you want around the dressing room. He's the vice captain. He is the person that G's everybody up, make sure everybody's having a good time. He's brilliant for the club, but he's also quite clever in terms of, his footballing knowledge. I remember last season him saying to me, very much off the record, that he wanted somebody who was, a transfer, somebody we were going to sign that was going to excite him. And he hadn't seen that at the point that we were talking. And then we signed or re-signed Marc Leonard. Ty Simpson came in. I know he didn't necessarily live up to the hype, but, players that we were excited about, he was like, actually, now I'm excited. He knows what he's doing, not just what he's doing on the football field, but he knows what the league is about, and he understands the opposition that they're coming up against. And he's that cheeky Scouse chappy as well, on and off the pitch. He's a wonderful person, and I really, really hope that he stays. But it's going to be difficult to know which of those three players is going to be our first choice. A lot will depend on the formation that we choose to deploy, I think. Lintop, probably more of a wing back, as is Odemayo, I would say, is more of a wing back than a full back. whereas the opposite would be said of Aaron McGowan. So I can see us wanting to get McGowan if he's, you know, fit, because again, he spent a lot of the time on the sidelines last year. But whenever he was fit, he usually came in and started. So
Right.
it'll be interesting. Harvey Lintott, I really am looking forward to seeing how he's developed. He's had an operation at the end of the season. Hopefully that sorts out the problems that he had last year, and hopefully he can show some of the form that he showed us when we were in League Two, because he looked like a quality player in that first season he was with us. And then unfortunately, we all thought he just didn't get a look in last season, but it transpires that there was clearly something wrong injury-wise with him, because he's then gone and had an operation to sort it out at the end of the year. It's going to be exciting, that right back position, because I just don't know who's going to be in it.
Yeah, I really like Ademay. It's interesting to hear you say he's more of a wing back, because from what I saw last season, which not as much as you, obviously, I'm not, but I think I thought he pretty did a steady job. I wouldn't have said he was caught out defensively necessarily as a right back in a four.
No, I don't think that. Look, all I'm saying with that is I think he is better as a wing back, and that's his best position. I don't think it's not that he's not good at fullback. Right. It's that that's the position that I think both Jon Brady and myself see him as being most effective. That's all it is.
Interesting. Okay, but then I would expect you to play a back four predominantly next season. Would you agree with that? Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. It's really hard to understand. At the very end of last season, Jon Brady said that we may well have to change the way that we play, because it depends on the players that we could get in. We were obviously losing Marc Leonard, which was a huge part of the way that we performed and the way that we played football last season and our tactics. So it depends on who we get in. So I'll be interested to see which way we go. I think our first pre-season fixture is in 2 weeks, or a week and a bit, now that we're on Friday. We'll kind of get a better understanding of what formation he wants to utilize in that first game, I think.
Yeah, well, hopefully that'll help. Left back again, I think it's another position where you're quite well stocked, because you got Ali Koiki, who I think is a very good left back when fit, or certainly competent at this level. But I'm a massive fan of Patrick Brutt. I think he's so consistent. I absolutely love his stamina there, in terms of being able to get up and down the pitch. He can produce some good cutbacks as well. I think he's got goals in him potentially. But there was one game, can't remember which game it was, where in injury time, he was literally made a lung-busting run, having played the 90 minutes, from like his defensive third into the final third, and then might have scored or set someone up or something like that. And it just sums up like Patrick Brutt's just got incredible stamina.
Yeah, at the beginning of the season, he was great, and he was making those runs. I think in the first 5 games, every single game he had at least one chance that he should have scored. And then eventually he did get a goal. I'm struggling to think. I might have been Cheltenham away. I can't think which game it was that he scored in. But he then got that goal. And it almost felt like after that, and maybe this is just a bad memory being old and everything now, but it felt like after that, he didn't quite make those, chances every single game. Now, Jon Brady did say that throughout last season that Brough played many more games than he probably should have done. And had we not had the injuries, then we would have rested him, maybe brought somebody else in to play left back for a game or two, just to give Brough a rest and more time to recuperate. And then it transpired later on, he was playing through an injury as well. So that probably stopped him from carrying on those long-busting runs. Really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed watching him play at the early part of the season when he was fully fit. He was great. I remember Wigan away, which was our first away game of the season, and we lost 2-1. He had a fantastic effort, and he ran all the way from basically our own byline all the way through to the other end. Unfortunately, it was that chance that he missed that then led to McManaman getting the winner. But, these things happen. If he'd have put it away, we'd have been the winners that day. So, 50-50 on that, I guess. But it was a joy to watch him when he was doing that.
Yeah, certainly. So again, Ali Koiki, any hope that you might be able to keep him fit next season and provide that competition for Bowie, and maybe give him the odd rest if he needs it?
I hope so, because I mean he pretty much missed the whole of last season,
Yeah.
and yet when he came back in at the very end, he showed the pace that he has.
Mm.
We were laughing because he scored in, I can't remember who it was against now, but it was right at the end. It was like in the 94th minute or something like that. And he picked the ball up on the edge of our box and literally ran with it the whole way, and then rounded the keeper to put it in the back of the net to seal the victory. I think it was a 2-0 win in the end. And it was great, and people were joking, maybe we should play him up front. He's got pace. Let's go with that instead. Don't waste him at left back. If he can stay fit, he will be a player that will provide us with width and will terrorize defenses. The one thing that I've always questioned about Ali Koiki is his defensive side of things. I feel he gets away with an awful lot because of his pace. So he might not be the best defender, but he can recover really well and get back and make a tackle because he's just quicker than everybody else. But I think there's still that question mark over the initial, how solid is he?
Right. So that would make me think then, Charles, let's say in a theoretical scenario, you got Akin Odemeo and Ali Koiki as both quite attacking fullbacks in a back four. Would that then mean you'd have to have a bit more defensive solidity in those sorts of games? Have you got you've lost Sean McWilliams now, haven't you? I mean, are you do you think Ben Fox can step up and be that anchor man who can maybe possibly even drop into the defence if needed when both fullbacks go forward?
I don't know if it'll be him. I think it more likely would be Jack Sowerby that would do that. Jack has dropped back into the back line plenty of occasions last season and the season before. In fact, there were a couple of games where he actually played centre back, and considering he's about 2 foot tall, it's a miracle that he can do that. But he's the one really that I would expect to see if we were going to look at solidifying defensively to make up for a lack of defensive nous, I guess, on that left hand side, because the fullback has bombed it forward. I would expect it would be Jack Sowerby that would do that job. Ben Fox much more box to box, I think, and that's the way that I think that Brady wants to utilize him. If you go back and look at how he played for Barnet, which was I mean a good few years ago and in the conference, but that was what he was doing. He was playing between the two boxes, popping up on the edge of the area to score for them, and then being a bit more defensive at the same time. I don't think we'd want to lose that. I think we want him to be able to cover that full length of the pitch, whereas Jack Sowerby a little bit more sit there for us, please.
Okay, that's interesting. I'd actually, for some reason, I had it in my head as being a bit more the other way. I'd always thought of Ben Fox as being a number 6, so that's really interesting to know.
I would say this, Gab, you are talking to me, and I don't claim to know anything about football, so I could be completely wrong.
No, I trust your judgment, Charles. So centre backs. What really interests me is that with Sam Sherring going, you've obviously retained Jordan Willis, but is there an opportunity maybe for Max Dyche or Josh Tomlinson to go further up the pecking order in terms of that centre back spot?
Well, there's no chance that Max Dyche is going to do it because he's gone on loan to Woking for the season.
Oh, has he? Right.
So that won't happen. I've not really heard anything about Josh Tomlinson for a good little while now. Again, there was an injury. Surprise, surprise. So I don't think that will happen. When we look at the centre backs, I mean, you've got Guthrie, you've got Willis. This is all going to be off the top of my head. So whether this goes right or not, I don't know.
Thank you. Tyler McGlaw as well as the other one. He's
and I suspect that we'll be looking to bring one more in as well on top of that. So it will be 2 from 4 if we are playing, a back 4, obviously. If we were to be looking at a back 3, then I'd suggest that Tomlinson might get a little bit more of a look in, or it could be that we're looking to get 2 more defenders in. But finances probably would suggest it'd be more likely that we'd look at Josh Tomlinson as being the 5th in the ranking, if you like, to step up if he's needed. So Tyler McGlaw is going to be interesting because he's had a whole season out with an injury, and before that, again, he would get injured quite easily, it would seem. So whether he can come on full pre-season behind him, recovered from that initial injury that he had, then hopefully he can show what he's all about, because we were quite excited about him coming. You know, he'd been on loan with us previously, and then we signed him permanently. And yeah, he was marked as being, here's a young player that is only going one way, which is upwards. And unfortunately, it just seems that injury has prevented that and hampered him. So be interesting to see what he can do. I would love nothing more to see him be a massive success. It will be, and I'm sure Jon Brady, this will just be a soundbite from one of his you know, interviews in the summer, no doubt. He'll be like a new signing for us because of the fact that we've not seen him for over a year.
Yeah, absolutely. So, although not like a new signing in the sense you were paying his wages last year.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, so probably at least another centre half coming in. But I guess the obvious contenders to start at centre back, if it's a back four, would be Jordan Willis and John Guthrie. Have you seen them play together yet? Or because you obviously had Sam Sherring last season, what sort of a partnership did they strike up when they did play?
I think they have. They must have done at some point throughout the season. I really like Willis in that he's got that, for me, that little bit extra composure. He's played, you know, in the Championship. He's played higher level football, and he just seems to have that little bit more of something about him where he's just confident, composed on the ball. He doesn't tend to let anybody beat him. His positioning seems quite good as well. So I'm really happy with that. We know all about John Guthrie. He's brilliant for us. He will head it away. He will just head it all day long. It will be fantastic for him. And then when he has to step out a little bit with the ball, he's happy to do that. I wouldn't say that he's the best ball-playing defender, but he's happy to do that. I think a lot of the time last season, we were looking to sort of go, if Guthrie had the ball, he'd look to give it to Sherring to do the actual distribution, or give it straight to Leonard to do that job. So, but as a pairing, I don't think I ever watched them and went, well, this doesn't look good. I think they've got a good understanding between them. And I wouldn't be surprised if one of the reasons why Willis has signed is, first of all, we gave him the chance off the back of being injured and being out from football for a little while. And then he struck up a good partnership with the guys that are already at the club. I wouldn't be surprised if that was part of his reasoning for staying, as well as the Wonga that was dangled under his nose.
Yeah, I think John Guthrie just seems like such a reliable centre half, and he's a real battler. Like that game at Carlisle where he battled on at centre half even though he was injured, and in the promotion season, and it's things like that that you just have so much trust in him. So I think that's a great foundation to have, especially with Willis signing on as well. It's going to provide a bit more athleticism in that ball playing element that you mentioned. Midfield then, Charles. Do you think that Marc Leonard's going to be a big miss, obviously? Do you think that we're going to be looking at Jack Sowerby and Ben Fox being the midfield pairing, or does Will Hondermark come into the equation, or do you think you're going to bring in another one?
I think we'll bring in somebody else because, as you said, we've lost Sean McWilliams, Hondermark, Sowerby, and Ben Fox. We know what they're about, and they've been there. I think Jack Sowerby is a starter for definite. When fit, he is always in the team.
What do you love about Jack Sowerby then,
Charles? What isn't to love about Jack Sowerby? I don't know. I mean, he's one of those players that will just, he will go and do the job that Marc Leonard did last season in picking the ball off the back line and then looking to distribute it. Not in a maybe with panache like Leonard did at times. He will give the simple ball. He is the simple midfield football player when he's on the ball. So he'll look to just give a simple pass that will just get us going. And it might be a lot of the time sideways. So Gareth Southgate will probably like him. But I mean, it's one of those where you kind of look at it and go, he's always quite solid in that role. And then when it comes to the defensive aspects of the game, he's good there as well. He's more and more experienced, obviously, every year he plays. That's the most obvious statement I've ever said in my life. But it's one of those where he's only getting better in his reading of the game and his understanding. And if you go back 2 years ago when we were in League Two, he can score an absolute cracker from outside the box if he gets the chance. So
yeah,
he's always one that I really like seeing on the team sheet.
I think for me with Jack Sowerby as well, it's the fact that he came through quite an unconventional route. He was at Squiresgate before he went to Fleetwood, and that's a massive jump into League One, and then Northampton. And I guess having played in the sort of lower tiers of non-league football steps, he kind of appreciates being a Football League player a bit more, or certainly a League One player as well. So I think that gives him a different perspective as well, and it means that he puts in such a great shift. So I'm sure he's somebody that Jon Brady absolutely loves. But yeah, I do think that it's just such an obvious question. You're going to need to try and replace the quality of Marc Leonard as best you can.
Yeah, I mean that's going to be the big question mark, isn't it? Whether that can happen. Who knows is the answer to that, because I certainly don't. I look, I've said this before. I don't watch that much football in the EFL other than the Northampton Town, so therefore I don't know an awful lot about players that play for other teams unless they stand out when they're playing against us or they're a big name. So,
Charles, I have some news for you. Breaking news.
Oh, I know the news.
Oh, you know the news. Great, okay.
But you could tell me. I know nothing about Cameron McGeehan. So why don't you fill me in, Gab?
So he's a midfielder that's had some great experience. I think he was at Norwich at the start of his career and made some real progress with Luton Town, and then probably did really well at list level before with Barnsley, playing alongside Alex Moat in I think it was a midfield too, and that helped them win promotion, I think, in 18-19. And then since then, I think he's had a bit more of a quiet few years, and might have been a bit on and off with injury, so he'll fit in well. But no, I think he's a forward-thinking midfielder, but he can operate deeper as part of a two-man midfield. Maybe not. I wouldn't say he's quite as technically refined as Marc Leonard, although he does have a lovely left foot. But I do think I think that he can bring some dynamism to the midfield as well. So I think that's going to be really exciting. And like Leonard, he can play as a 6 or as an 8 or as a 10. So 6 probably being alongside someone like Jack Sowerby, who provides that defensive insurance. So yeah, I think that's a good signing. So I guess I'll write that down into the sort of squad list as we go. So will Honda Marc, Charles, what's in store for him this season, do you think?
I don't know. He's really difficult to actually understand, because when we signed him, it was the January of obviously 2 seasons ago now, and he was signed as one for the future. So we weren't expecting him to really play a part in that promotion season at all. And then because of injuries, he was kind of forced into the squad and into the first team. Last season, he didn't feature that heavily. He had a few little spells where he'd play 2 or 3 games in a row. But then as soon as somebody else like Jack Sowerby or Sean McWilliams or whoever it was that had been out of the team was able to come back in, it was Honda Marc that always dropped out. And there were also quite a number of times where Honda Marc didn't even make the bench. So what his future holds at Sixfields is anybody's guess, really, especially towards the very end of the season. He wasn't featuring. So I don't know whether he'll be somebody that will be, maybe looking for a move away. I don't know if we can afford to let him go, because, essentially, I doubt that we would loan him out somewhere because we wouldn't necessarily be able to bring anybody else in to cover that position. I would expect him to be a backup again. The one other thing that I will say about Honda Marc is I'm not really certain what his best role is in that midfield. I know he likes to, run with dribble with the ball, in that kind of, and forgive me for comparing this or making this comparison, but I think he likes to run with the ball in the way that Foden runs with the ball, in terms that he's not massively quick. He doesn't kick the ball ahead and chase it.
Yeah.
He likes close control with the
Mm.
football, and that's how we'll run with the ball. And we've seen it a couple of times happen, but again, because he was probably having to play in a position that wouldn't allow him to do that and get forward that often when he came into the team, that's probably why we didn't see it happen as much as he would maybe like to do it. But I don't know whether he's the type of, or he's the player that would go into that role in the team anyway. So Marc is a
Do you
question
think
mark for me.
Do you think Charles he's going to suit a 4-3-3 more than a 4-2-3-1? Because in a 4-3-3 you're able to carry the ball from deep, whereas in a 4-2-3-1 he's not really going to be a 6, but as a 10 it's you don't have as much space to dribble into in a way. So I'm thinking he'd be one that might work in a 4-3-3, but actually if you're going to play Pinnock as a 10 in a 4-2-3-1, it's hard to see where he'd fit in.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. Maybe 4-3-3 would be better formation for him. And as we all know, I think we all know, he's not going to be the player that we build the team around. So that isn't necessarily going to happen. I would really like, as I say, about every single player that comes to Cobblers, I want them to be a success. I really hope he can be. I just don't know whether he'll get the game time. And I still don't know how he'll be utilised. Yeah.
Well, that's a big question. I guess the headline to take away there is Charles Commins from Cobblers To Me compares Will Marc to Phil Foden. Get that on the Chronicle.
Absolutely. No. I always make one ridiculous comparison. I have to.
I know where you're coming from. Sam Hoskins, Charles, 15 league goals last season. Can he do it again?
The GOAT, of course he can. Of course he can. I actually really like. It's hard to talk about Sam Hoskins now because you haven't mentioned what we've brought in for striker, but I think he would really work and benefit from having a. So last season we had Appere, who basically ran around a lot and chased, and he started the press. He did a lot of that. I think Sam benefits greatly from a player that can not only do that, but also holds the ball up really well up at that end of the pitch. And I'm hoping that that's what we're looking at bringing in. I don't know whether we've got it just yet. I think we might be looking at a target man type player to come in as another striker. I'll wait and see. I would like to see it. I still think that Sam would play on the right and would, come off that side to go and get his goals, which is what he's done for the last 2 years. I don't see him being the little man in a big man, little man partnership or anything like that.
You've tried to play Sam Hoskins up top before and it's never really worked, has it?
Oh, I don't know. Ask Tranmere fans. He blew them away that day when he was up top. So it can work. It can work.
We'll see. I mean, I think with Callum Morton and James Wilson, I think they're definitely going to be runners. So they're definitely going to be players that can run the channels and try and create space. But whether their hold-up play is going to be at the level that you're going to need to bring the best out of Sam Hoskins and facilitate his goal-scoring potential is the big question. And it does make me wonder, actually, Charles, would it have been better to have kept hold of Louis Appere, who we know can do the running and he can hold it up, which is quite a difficult combination to find sometimes.
Well, it wasn't that we didn't want to keep hold of him. He wanted more money. So we weren't prepared to. The official line from the club is that Louis Appere wanted an amount of money that would have made him the top earner at the club, and we weren't prepared to make him the top earner at the club. Whether Stevenage, who he's gone to, did give him that money, I don't know. But he chose to go elsewhere because we didn't offer him what he wanted. So it wasn't that we didn't want him. It was more that he wanted more money and we weren't going to offer him that much.
I see. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. That's an important thing to make clear. So Mitch Pinnock then, Charles. I'm quite a big fan of Mitch Pinnock, actually, because I like the way I like him in the number 10 spot. So probably one who suits 4-2-3-1 a bit more than 4-3-3, because the 10 role for me gives him that freedom to float over to the channels and put those deliveries in. And I think he's probably the best deliverer, if you like, in the squad right now.
Yeah, and I think that's why there's a question mark within the fan base as whether he should play at number 10 or whether he should be out on the wing because of that delivery. There have been numerous amounts of times when on our podcast we have talked about Pinnock not being good enough for that 10 role. Now, last season we were quite often saying we wanted Leonard in the 10 and then Pinnock out wide. But then
if you played Leonard in the 10, then you miss his collecting the ball off the defence or getting the attacks going.
Yeah, so. Exactly. And that was the thing but I mean, we wanted more from Leonard further up the pitch because of his quality. And I felt he was a little bit wasted by just going and doing that. I'll pick it up off the back line and then just give it to somebody else. I wanted him higher up the pitch so he could really make more of an effect on the game. Now, I'm not saying that would have been the right decision to do. Again, I caveat it. My football knowledge in terms of tactics and all of that, non-existent.
You're going to caveat every comment, Charles, on this podcast with my football knowledge.
Well, do you know what? Why pretend that you're something that you're not, Gab? That's all I'll say. Yeah. You have far more knowledge of every player than I do. And,
no, on Northampton Town, Charles, you're the expert here. I'm learning from you.
I mean, it's one of those things where I know that the fans will say that Pinnock plays better when he's out wide than he does when he's in the number 10. That is the perception that we have when we see him. It's not to say that he can't play in the 10 or anything like that. And maybe it was more of a case of that we didn't have the players around him to be able to utilize him best. Maybe he got closed down far too easily because of the fact that maybe, I don't know, Appare wasn't. Maybe what we really needed was Hilton to actually do something for us and play on the pitch and to have occupied defenders. So if he'd have occupied defenders, then maybe that would have created space for Pinnock to be more effective in that 10. Whereas out wide, he was able to use his skill and trickery because he's basically going one-on-one with a fullback. And therefore was able to then get round that one person. But when you're faced with, say, 2 or 3 defenders, it's a lot harder for him to really maybe showcase that.
I guess so. But then on the other hand, he's not necessarily a quick, direct type that's going to that's going to win a one-on-one so much. Whereas I think if you've got someone on the flank who's forcing the opposing fullback back, then that allows Pinnock to drift in at the latter stages of moves and actually dink in a delivery that he might not have been able to if he was a marked man as an actual winger. So
that's a fair point. I mean, the one thing that I would say is that what Mitch lacks in pace, he makes up for in technical ability on the ball.
Easily. Yeah.
So that's the thing with that, I think, is that we would see him not necessarily beat a defender for pace, but he beat him for skill. And that's how he would get his cross in. And that's how he'd actually pick up all the assists that he did last year and the year before, especially in League Two. It'll be interesting again. I keep saying that as well. It'll be interesting to see how well he does. He's clearly going to play in the number 10 because it looks like he's been given the number 10 as an upgrade to his squad number this season, if the training pictures are anything to go by.
We'll see. It does look like, though, that those attacking midfield spots behind the striker could do with more options, because I know Pinnock and Hoskins, they're going to start in some capacity, some first names on the team sheet. But you've not got another, unless, you can't, I suppose you've got Cameron McGee in there who could play as a number 10 and you could move Pinnock out wide. But I think you'll want more attacking midfield options, possibly.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would like to have a pacey left winger to, mix that up a little bit. So if it was okay, that was one of the things that I kind of wanted last year, was that if you were going to have somebody like Pinnock and move him inside, then what's out on the left-hand side wasn't always as quick as you would want it. We were relying on, say, Brough to get forward from further back, therefore to create that width higher up the pitch, but that leaves you obviously vulnerable at the back in that position. So if we had somebody, it feels very much like the conversation people are having about England at the moment, isn't it? And wanting like Gordon there on the left because he'll provide the pace, rather than having Foden that will just vacate that position.
Do you know what though, Charles? I would actually say I do hear you because Bruff does has to get from the back to the attack, and that can take a while, but he can get there so quickly. So I'm thinking actually, if you've got a 4-2-3-1, you allow yourself the insurance of 2 6s, or Sowerby, and Fox is pretty good defensively, although we think he might be able to play a box-to-box role as well. But I think you might have enough defensive insurance with the 4-2-3-1 that allows you to get away with Patrick Bra getting forward. And actually, you got Aaron McGowan's a pretty solid right back. So maybe the classic winger that you've mentioned there might be more one to provide width on the right rather than the left.
Yeah, maybe. And maybe that was the way that we actually were thinking last season. The one thing that I remember is that it was our left-hand side that was always picked on by the opposition. Time and time again, they would come down our left-hand side, and that's where the chances would come from. And there was a lot of time when we were looking at it and going, we can see this. We can see it in the stands. What is being done to actually change that? Now, it was talked about after one particular game, and I can't remember which one it was, but where they were sort of saying that, you know, there's always going to be somewhere in our team where, in order to utilize a strength, that's going to create a weakness. And it was not necessarily that Jon Brady was actually going to pick out the left back, whether it be Bruff or Odemeo had to play there a few times, whoever it was that came in to fill in when Bruff couldn't. He wasn't picking out people by name, but it was quite clear that he was talking about the fact that we know that left-hand side is a worry and is the thing that people are causing problems with us for. So, or people, problems for us. And so, yes, I think you're right. We do need the 6 to come over and to operate in a covering position in order to do that. I don't know whether it worked well enough last season with the players that we had for us to go into this season with the same players and expect it to be any different.
Okay, that makes sense. I suppose the other alternative would be to sign a left-footed centre-back who's also quick and strong and could play on the left of back 3, because one option that we could look at is a wing-back sort of 3-4-2-1, where you've got Odemeo and Bruh as your wing backs, and then another left side, someone on the left of the 3-man defence to Guthrie and Willis, who'll be on the right of the back 3, and then you could maybe have Pinnock and McGeehan as your 2 number 10s, and then Mawson or Wilson up top. Oh, I suppose you'd need to incorporate Hoskins, wouldn't you? Yeah, that's a tough one.
Absolutely.
I'm not sure. Okay, well, I'll
it's hard, isn't it?
It's hard. Away there. Yeah. No. I was thinking alive, and then Hoskins. Right. What's the biggest expectations for this season, Charles? Is it just about survival, or do you want more than survival?
Oh, I want more, but will I get it? I don't know. Again, it's so hard to know at this stage of the season. I think we are definitely operating at towards the very bottom of the league. I have to be realistic. I was saying, we were talking about this me and the guys that do the podcast, and I was saying that this was last week before we'd made a signing, and lots of people were panicking on social media and saying, this is terrible, there's no budget, and blah 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 blah. I said that the way that I think about it is that every season I start with my prediction, if you like, of being bottom of the league. And then what happens in, the transfer market and the things that happen, hopefully bump us up. So I start very small and then grow, hopefully. And I don't know, because I don't know enough about the players that we've brought in, other than maybe Callum Morton, because we all know about him being Cobblers fans already. I don't know whether we're going to end up with a team as good as we had last season. It's difficult for me to necessarily know. So a success for next season, the same as the one just gone, will be avoiding relegation and still being a League One club for the following season, 25-26. I would love us to, make a step up from where we finished this time around. Right now, I can't see that happening.
Yeah.
It's going to take a lot to make sure. We need to get off to a very good start. We need to make sure that we capitalize on the, early few fixtures. I sort of looking at our fixtures, I remember sort of thinking we don't have many big boys at the very, very beginning. So
Mhm.
maybe we've got, if we can pick points up there, then maybe we can then grow in confidence and, move from there. If we start badly, I mean, it's the same for every football club, right? You start
Mhm.
badly, it's all going to go to pot. And yeah, I don't want that to happen. I will say this. It's the 5th of July. My understanding is that James Wilson has been signed as backup, not as starting striker or starting whatever position he would be in. And that we're still looking to make 2 more additions to the forward line.
Interesting.
We're also, I think there's still going to be at least 4 signings to be made.
Mm.
And
Interesting.
we've got 3 loan spaces to use up as well. So there's still more to come from our transfer window. And I'm not going to make a prediction as to where we're going to finish at this stage, because we are not anywhere close to being even the most incomplete finished article. So until we're in that position, I feel like it's a bit unfair for me to go in and go, right, this is terrible or this is great or whatever. I'm keeping it nice and level, and I'm just going, right, until I've seen how we actually play, and realistically, that won't be until the first day of the season. I am not going to go out there. I know it's going to be a hard season. I'm realistic, but I'm not going to go mad about it either way. We're not going to win the league. And I'm not going, oh, we're going to finish on 1 point and go down with a whimper and be gone by November.
We'll see. What's the biggest reason to believe that you're going to meet your expectations or ambitions this season, Charles?
Jon Brady, without a doubt. I said before about how the fact that he's a fabulous coach, that is the thing that he does, is he progresses players. All you've got to do is look at our record with some of the players that have left us. Kieron, Bowie, Marc, Leonard, both amazing, came on really, really well in their 2 years that they've spent with us. I think you look at Sam Sherring, for example. Yes, he's dropped down the league. Don't know really why that is. It seems a bit weird, but he's dropped down league. He was expected to have, if he was leaving us, to go above us to a team not necessarily right at the very top of League One, but up in that sort of top 10 area. And for some reason, that's not happened. He's come on leaps and bounds. Sam Hoskins is incredible under Jon Brady. He's worked so well on the good stuff that Sam does, as well as bringing him up to a better standard of the weaknesses that he has as well. So that's the one thing that makes me believe. It's that how good it is, Jon Brady is at getting the best out of the players, both individually, improving them, but then putting them together as a team and making them work together to get results. So that is the one thing that gives me hope for this season. And who knows what it might bring.
Biggest reason for doubt?
At the moment, my biggest doubt is, have we got a squad good enough to do it? We still need signings. We still need players to come in. I know, look at the 4 signings that we've made. I mean, we'll discount Cam McGeehan because I've literally not even been able to go and read anything about him yet. So Cam's not involved in this one. But of the other ones, I know that there are doubts as to whether or not they're really good enough. And those doubts are coming from overreactions, I think, or initial reactions to signings being made, because James Wilson has come in, he's left Port Vale, who got relegated last season. He's had his injury problems as well, I understand. Callum Morton has not pushed on since he left us. He's come out in his interviews since he joined to basically say that ever since he's left us, every club that he's been to, he's been played out of position, and he's maybe not had or been in the environment that he has been able to enjoy his football in. And he's hoping or presuming maybe that coming back to somewhere that he knows that he's had a good time, The manager has obviously said to him, well, we want you to play as a striker. We don't want you to play as a left winger. And therefore, he's happier and feeling good about his football. But those last few seasons, he's not kicked on from where he was before.
Sure.
So there's still doubts there. And then you've already talked about Zanev and your question marks over him. I've got the question marks as well. I don't know. But then again, he's come in as number 2, trying to push Lee Burge. It's bits and pieces that are still needed to be filled in our squad. And the majority of those pieces need to be first team, name on the team sheet, as many games as possible players. So until we've got those, it's very, very difficult for me to judge how we're going to go and what we're going to do. So at the moment, that's my biggest cause of doubt.
Okay. Like you said, you're not going to give me a prediction. Can you at least give me a number then between 1 and 10 to denote your level of optimism for the season ahead?
Optimism level. I don't know. This is the first time, genuinely, that I've really thought that hard about Northampton Town, because at the moment, I'm all in on the Euros. And so, I'm doing a daily podcast called It's All Euro 2024 to me. Go listen to it. And literally, I've just been concentrating on that. So apart from sort of going, oh, we've signed someone, what's this? And then popping a tweet out on our podcast account about it. That's the most that I've really done. So I'm still in that mode as well. So it's really hard. Okay. My optimism level, I'm always optimistic. I'm a positive person, or at least I try my hardest to be. And I know that doesn't, some people call me a happy clapper and things like that.
I don't think you're a happy clapper. I think you're very balanced, to be fair.
Well, that's my opinion of it, right? But that's not how everybody sees it.
Okay.
And that's absolutely fine as well. I like to be realistic. I like to try and be balanced about it. And therefore, right now, my optimism level, if I'm going to be completely honest, needs to be, and I'll use Football Manager player ratings for this, a 6.
6. Okay, there you go.
Bog standard. That's where it is. It either goes up or it goes down from there. Done.
Okay, we'll see. Right. Well, listen, Charles, thanks so much for your insight. Everyone go have a listen to It's All Euros to Me and It's All Cobblers to Me once that returns. You can also subscribe to EFL Debate on YouTube and on Spotify. If you've watched this on YouTube, feel free to drop a comment to let us know how you think the Cobblers are shaping up for 24-25. If you've enjoyed it on Spotify, please give us a review as well, because that would help us out a lot. And we'll see you again very soon.